Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Lieboff. Joining me today are my co-hosts and colleagues, Anthony DeBundo and BJ Cunningham. And together, the three of us will take you match by match through the upcoming weekend in the Premier League. Then we'll stop off in Germany from the Bundesliga, do some Serie A, LaLiga, Ligue 1, give out our three-leg Underdog Parlay, which is checking it at right around 90-1 this weekend, and then give out our best bets in the Premier League and get out of here. But before we get to all that, a reminder that Wondergoal is proudly presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. It believes that every sport should be epic. Every match, every game, every goal, every play, from the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today with the promo code ACTION, and you'll get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. Whatever the sport, Aussie rules football playoffs are in full effect, ladies and gentlemen, and it's Melbourne and Carlton this weekend is going to be an absolute ripper. It's box office. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. And Bet365, you must be 21 or older, and you must be present in Colorado, Iowa, New Jersey, Ohio, or Virginia. And of course, if you or anyone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia, or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms and conditions apply. BJ, Anthony, I think at first glance, I thought that when we went into the international break, I thought this weekend of Premier League, I was like, it doesn't really look that great from a betting perspective. And then when I really dug into it this week, I completely shifted that. I think it's a great weekend to bet some footy here. Not just Australian footy either, but some good old-fashioned soccer in the Premier League and around Europe. I will start with our headliner. That's Everton. It's a little podcast derby. Sunday morning, 11:30 a.m. The Toffees are plus 475 at home. Arsenal's traveling as a minus 188 road favorite. The draw is plus 350. Anthony, I want to start with you because your first ever bet on Everton.
I believe this is my second bet on Everton. Ever. I'm 0-1 lifetime. I don't count any bet that happened before this season. So therefore, I did bet them against Villa and lost in pretty routine fashion. It was not really much of a sweat. But look, I have, we've had this conversation about Everton and what they are at this point in the season. And the numbers are actually pretty encouraging for Everton. Who do you think has created more expected goals and chances this season, Michael? Everton or Arsenal?
Everton. And we've done it against a murderer's row too.
They've created more murderer's row chances.
And how much have they conceded?
Well, the defense.
Yeah.
The defense isn't as bad as I thought it was when I was digging through the numbers.
Once again, and they did it against a murderer's row.
Sheffield United,
Wolves, Sheffield,
Fulham.
Yeah.
Not like Arsenal's played exactly the most difficult schedule in the world, but yeah, Everton has shown real life in attack, and I think there's the chance that Jack Harrison makes his debut this weekend for Everton, which would, I think, be a significant boost because, believe it or not, Everton has one player who has consistently overperformed his XG from a finishing perspective throughout his career, and his name is Jack Harrison. 21 goals from 15 expected, and he's beaten the numbers every year at Leeds, a Leeds team that perennially underperformed their numbers and got them relegated. Also might have DCL wearing a face mask, which would be very intimidating for the Arsenal back line.
You got to adjust your numbers anytime.
Right. The fact that DCL could play at least a half here does help Everton. I mean, he's the main target on crosses, and when he's been on the pitch, it hasn't been very often, but when he's been on the pitch, he's been a good striker and getting about a half expected goal per 90. So Calvert-Lewin and Harrison, help maybe improve this finishing because, it looks like at times they're trying not to score when they play. And I know Michael's bet them every week, and I've tried to pick my spots a little bit with this team because I really don't trust them. But at home, off of a break against an Arsenal team that I think is overvalued is a perfect spot for me. Look, Arsenal, has not done a great job of creating high quality chances. They had just 3 shots with an expected goals of 0.1 or higher against United until the Jesus breakaway, which dramatically inflated their numbers. If you look at, their, game state when it was 0-0 or 1-1 prior to going up 2-1 and then the game got haywire late, they were not all that much better than Man United at home. And of course they were good in build up and they weren't, necessarily giving up possession, but United was also very comfortable defensively for large stretches of that match where they didn't look like they were about to get broken down. It was not like last year's fixture, for example, when United was kind of defending for their lives the entirety of the match. So I think that there's some real question marks about what Arsenal's attack is right now. And I think you're seeing that this is a team last year that got really good finishing numbers from their big 3, Saka, Martinelli, and Odegaard. And if those guys regress from a finishing perspective, the underlying quality just isn't quite there to overwhelm these teams. So for them to be, over -1 on the road, -200 money line on the road against Everton, I think it's a little bit high. And so I'm going to bet the Toffees catching the goal at home.
Yeah, I don't even need to say it, but I'll be sprinkling the money line here. I think Everton can get on the board. It's at home. Arsenal's got the Champions League to kind of worry about. It's a Sunday kickoff too, so just a few days. They play PSV first, right? So there's a little bit of a yeah.
Played everybody else on Saturday, but we get Sunday.
Yeah,
lovely.
It's a little bit of a tricky spot, I think, coming back from an international break, and even if Calvert-Lewin doesn't play, Beto looked great against Sheffield United. So they're dangerous, but you just never know what team Everton's going to play for, if that makes sense. Are they going to play for Everton or are they going to try to play against themselves? It's maddening to watch. Don't trust them as far as I can throw them, but at these numbers, it's fine. And the one thing that does give me some pause here is we've kind of joked about it, but the schedule they face has been cheeks, Wolves and Sheffield United and Fulham, and the one team that they played that has like any sort of top 6 aspirations, Aston Villa. Like, so the only team that they played where the other team's going to try to dominate the game and be on the front foot, they just couldn't even cope, which is a little frightening. So I get if people would be a little nervous to back the Toffees here, but that's why the number's good. And those are kind of the bets that more often than not are going to lead to value here. So I'll be on the money line, BJ, and you're also backing some chaos here.
I am, and I like both teams to score at -135. The thing with Everton, and if you watch, obviously, Michael, you've watched every single Everton match, is the way they create their chances, which is not a surprise under Sean Dyche, is via crosses. They have attempted 95 crosses so far this Premier League season. That is second most behind only Chelsea, and like Anthony mentioned, 6th in non-penalty expected goals. So they have created a lot of chances. And where I think they can be effective against Arsenal is via crosses and winning those aerial duels, because as of right now, as we're taping this, Gabriel is questionable play. And him being out is massive in a match like this because he is Arsenal's main aerial threat, both defensively and offensively on set pieces. Last season, he had 100 aerial duel wins and a 54% aerial duel win percentage. The next closest for Arsenal was Saliba with 54 aerial duels won. So he is massive when you have to face a team like Everton who's going to cross the ball that many times and put a big time value on scoring off of set pieces. But here's the one pause that if I were somebody who wanted to back Everton is, yes, if you look into Everton's high pressing numbers, they are really, really good. I believe they're 3rd so far in the Premier League, but they're 13th in passes per defensive action and 14th in build-up completion percentage allowed. So that tells me that, yes, they have forced some high turnovers, but more often than not, teams are beating that first line of the press, and then there's just acres of space to operate, which since they've hadn't really played a murderer's row, what's the best team they've played? Aston Villa, who is a build-up team just like Arsenal, and they ripped them apart. So, and even if you go back to last season, Everton did beat Arsenal in this matchup at Goodison Park. And it was, if you remember, it was Sean Dyche's first match in charge. Everton came out, and what we thought they were going to be was Sean Dyche's Burnley, which is 4-4-2 mid-block and kind of sit back. But no, he came out and pressed Arsenal and threw Arsenal for a loop, and they won the match because of it. But then what happened less than a month later at the Emirates? Arsenal knew that was going to happen, and they absolutely ripped them apart and beat them 4-0. So that's the other end of the spectrum on this. So for me, if Gabriel is out, I think it's going to be a massive loss for Arsenal defensively, and that gives Everton a good shot to score here. Obviously, they are due for some positive regression because of how many chances they've created and only scored twice. So I projected both teams to score at minus 165. So minus 135 is too good of a price for me to pass up.
Great. It should be fun. Sunday at 11:30. Saturday morning now, Wolves and Liverpool. Wolverhampton 7-1 at home. Liverpool traveling at minus 250 and the draws plus 375. I'm passing here.
What?
I know. It's tempting.
This is a Michael Leboff special.
Yeah, I know. It's tempting, but you'll see as we get through the show. Like, there's just too many other games that I can't. Yeah, it'd be like a 10-team money line underdog round robin for me this week if I really wanted to get into it. But I'll be passing. What do you got, BJ?
I like over 3.5 at plus 120, plus 130. Given what we've seen from Wolves so far this season, they're kind of playing the same way that they played under Lopetegui and Bruno Lage, but it's with a lot more intensity and a lot more purpose going forward. They're not just putting a value on defensive possession, playing slow buildup. They're actually trying, once they beat the first line of the press, to get things going in quick transitions, which is kind of what you saw with Gary O'Neill at Bournemouth. And speaking of crosses, Wolves have completed the most crosses of anybody in the Premier League into the opponent's penalty area. So that's going back to the Julian Lopetegui and Bruno Lage days, except, Wolves, they're interesting because, yes, the only match they've won is against Everton, but I really don't think they've played that bad this season, and I don't think they're bad overall. And I think Gary O'Neill has done a fantastic job actually instilling belief into a squad that coming into the season looked deader than dead and is headed for relegation. But so far, with the collection of players that they have played very, very well. They've created a ton of chances, but defensively, they've been very, very bad. So now they're obviously taking on a Liverpool team that, if they want to try to build out of the back, which you saw both against Crystal Palace, against Brighton, doesn't really work when you face good high-pressing teams, and they will just turn you over repeatedly and get great chances on net. And I believe that's what's going to happen here for Liverpool. Even though Aston Villa didn't create a ton against Liverpool, they had moments going forward. Liverpool, I don't think still has a true number 6 ball stopper in the middle of the pitch. And Liverpool is dealing with a lot of injuries along their back line. Konate is questionable. Van Dijk's going to be out. Trent Alexander-Arnold, it looks like, is doubtful for this match as well. So now it's going to be the Matip, Joe Gomez back line, which, is a downgrade for Liverpool. So Wolves has created a ton of chances so far this season. So I think that they will have moments in this match to potentially get in on Liverpool's net. I mean, Alisson is, once again, having just an unreal shot-stopping season. Just seems like he'll never, ever regress. But I think this has the potential, especially, with Wolves when they fall behind, things tend to get a little chaotic with them. So over 3.5 projected right on about 3.5 goals. So over 3.5 at plus 130 is a good enough price for me.
I guess not recency bias, but just like certain things in betting just stick in your mind. And for some reason, anytime I try to think about Wolves and Liverpool, the game from 2 seasons ago comes, like the last match day of the season where, it just always comes to my mind, and I just expect every Liverpool Wolves match to be like that. And Anthony, you're kind of thinking that here.
Yeah, I do. It's not that long ago that match was, and remember, we were getting like Wolves team total for the match at like plus 110, and that was the top of the Liverpool defensive mountain, and they've kind of slid down the mountain ever since. And look, the numbers are a little skewed because they've played a couple games now down a man for large stretches, the Newcastle game and the Bournemouth game. So it does certainly skew the numbers. But what we have so far on this Liverpool team is actually worse defensively than last year. Not from an expected goals perspective, because they've been very good in defending their penalty area. They've only conceded a couple of big scoring chances, so they've been better with that. But the rest of the profile that starts in the midfield is actually worse. Box entries allowed, final entry, third entries allowed. When we look at, progressive passes allowed, ability to turn teams over high, all of those numbers are worse than last season. So, the fact they haven't conceded a ton of chances and a ton of goals yet, is fine and all and well for them, but I think there's real regression here for this defense. I don't think they're as good as they've played at various parts of the last 4 games. And you mentioned it, BJ. Van Dijk is going to get suspended here, so he's definitely out, and Konate may also be out. Now, it didn't matter against Villa. Villa put in a really poor performance, wasn't able to really pressure this Liverpool defense particularly often. They had one big chance. That was about it. But you mentioned it with Wolves. Last year, they were bottom 5 in high turnovers forced. They were not a team that wanted to press you and get in transition. They wanted to slow the match down, play out long possessions. This Wolves team is very different. They're top 5 in high turnovers forced. And so this is a team that's going to get up into you a little bit, turn you over, and then run. And they have the talent to do it. And look, their attacking numbers have been okay. They haven't been great. They're kind of buoyed with their expected goals numbers by a lot of big scoring chances created when down a bunch of goals already. The United match and the Brighton match come to mind. But the underlying profile isn't all that bad, and they have been pretty effective at getting the ball into the opponent's penalty area. They don't have the great quality in the area, which has always been their problem. They don't finish chances. They don't create a lot of big ones generally because of the lack of true talent. But again, against this Liverpool defense that's going to take risks, I think there's going to be an opening. So I like Wolves team total over in the first half, plus 160. I think they can come out and surprise them early. We've seen Liverpool get surprised early in just about every game this season, except for Villa. So, I think they're vulnerable, and I'm going to take Wolves to score in the first half.
It's funny. Liverpool in their salad days had put such an emphasis on those first 10, 12 minutes, coming out and storming teams. And now it's kind of been the opposite this season. Speaking of Villa, they are odds on at home against Palace, minus 110. The Eagles come in 3-1, and the draw is plus 260. I like Palace here. This defense has just been really good. And Roy Hodgson, it's kind of chic to make fun of him, but he's just got this team playing great defense. And even under Vieira, this generation of Crystal Palace has been good defensively for the better part of 3-4 seasons now. And that makes them live, I think, in spots like this. So I don't know. I think 3-1 on the road is fine against a team like Villa, that 8th best, 9th best team in the Premier League right now. I think Palace is 12th or 13th. It's not that wide of a gap, Anthony. I don't know if you're coming with me here.
Yeah, I'm not. Palace good win against Wolves at home last week or 2 weeks ago. You saw the defense, and it is refreshing because so much of this league right now is tilting that scale, that balance toward the overs, toward the openness. And you look at the way Spurs and Liverpool and Brighton, especially, even more of a Villa, taking more chances in possession, sending more numbers forward, playing a more progressive style. And then there's Palace, who said, you know what, we have actually conceded over 1 expected goal in 3 of our 4 matches, and yet we are a top 5 defense of this league despite that, which is just kind of tells you how much this league has tilted toward goals in the last, I would say 8 to 10 months. It's been a real revelation. So, from a matchup perspective, I think that this suits Palace to be, defensive and in transition. Villa has done a really good job of creating a specific high number of chances without really great shot volume. I kind of think that the shot volume numbers will win the day there, and they're just not going to be as good of an attack as they've been thus far. And I think the Liverpool match kind of suggested that. But also, the teams that have given Villa trouble have been the teams that are able to get time and space on the ball in the midfield and pick out a pass. And Palace doesn't really have that. They don't have the Trent. They don't have, the Foden type player. So I think that's, one of the main kind of differences with Villa, whereas, Palace will struggle here. So, and the number's about right for me. I have Villa slightly better. They're at home. So if it got to, 3/4 or a goal, then certainly I'm all over Palace, but at the current number, it's a pass.
All right, BJ, this one is going to be a lot of fun here.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yep.
Fulham is minus 150 at home against the newly promoted Hatters. Luton Town plus 450. The draw is plus 275. I know Fulham's played a relatively tough schedule. The Everton match to open the season, of course, was a disastrous win for them. I'm still trying to figure that one out, how they won that match. And then it was like Brentford, Arsenal, City. So the numbers are going to be a little bit skewed, but they also were terrible defensively last year, and now they're just getting punished for it more often than not. So, like, if you're going to bet Luton Town at some point, and we're going to, this feels it. So I'm in. Plus 450. This is my first bet on them.
Yeah, +1, -134 for me. Michael, as crazy as it sounds, I didn't think Fulham was that bad as the final scoreline suggests against City. They only allowed City 6 shots in the entire match. I can't remember the last time City was held under 10 shots at home, but all of them were just of incredibly high value. So Fulham did do a decent job, but the situation here is going to drastically change where they're going to have to be the ones that are controlling possession, playing through pressure, and that is not something that I think they are capable of at this time. They do keep Paulinho because the deal fell through with Bayern Munich, so that's obviously a plus for them. But the problems that have existed for Fulham defensively is they've really struggled to defend in wide areas. They've done a good job of clogging up the middle of the pitch, closing it down there. But so far this season, they've allowed 82 crosses and 7 of them to be cleared in their penalty area. Luton Town, if you look at their profile, it's a lot of bad. To be fair to them, though, they have played Brighton on the road, Chelsea on the road, and then a really informed West Ham team at home, which I didn't think they were that bad in that match. If you look at the expected goals, it was pretty even. West Ham did obviously create the 2 big chances. There were large stretches where Luton Town was applying great pressure to West Ham. And in the end, again, the expected goals bared out that it really wasn't that dominant of a West Ham win. So now we get here. The one thing that Luton Town has done well this season is they have completed the 4th most crosses of anybody in the Premier League. That's actually encouraging here when you're going to face a Fulham team that struggles to defend those crosses. So we have one thing we haven't really seen with Luton, though, that I'm kind of sad by. But then again, you look at what Burnley's doing, it's like it clearly wouldn't have worked, is they're not coming out with their high pressing, like crazy style that they did in the Championship. I think Rob Edwards is I think he just knows that if he does that, they're going to get ripped apart. So he's trying to blend the 2 styles together, and he's kind of struggling. But again, they've played difficult competition. So now they get to play somebody down near their level. And Fulham -150. I mean, on what earth should they be -150 against anybody in this Premier League right now? So Luton Town +1, -134. The price is just insane in Fulham. They should never, ever be above -115 against anybody in this league.
Yeah. That's it.
I got to think about it some more.
You can do that.
I have not bet Luton Town. I said that I was not going to bet them more than 5 times all season. This is the closest I've come yet.
What happens if they become Brentford, though?
They're not becoming Brentford. There's nothing in their profile that says that's happening. They don't have the talent. They don't have the coach. They have nothing. They are terrible. But they did play well against West Ham. If you had West Ham in that game, you should send me the lotto tickets because that was a very lucky cash.
Yeah.
All right. Well, be sure to follow Anthony in the award-winning Action Network app.
I don't think I'm going to do it.
To see when. No, you'll do it.
Maybe we'll get some Fulham steam on match day, and then I
have a slice of pizza on Friday night. Just lock that puppy in and join the fun on the Hatters. More fun coming in the next one. This one's gonna be a lot of fun too. Boy, I mean, as I said, like the more and more I dug into the slate, the more and more I was just laughing. It's like they kind of created a schedule of matches for this podcast because we're going to be all over Brighton in this spot. United's +115 at home. Brighton comes to the Theater of Dreams at +210, and the draw is +275. How can you trust United to stop this Brighton defense, Brighton attack, enough to not be tempted by this number? Or actually, let me put it the other way. How do you trust this United defense enough to bet United? What's the devil's advocate case here, Anthony?
The case to bet United?
Yeah. It's really hard to... I can't come up with
I mean, I think there's a clear case, and it's like, oh, yeah. Eric Ten Hag said, we want to become the best counter-attacking team in the world. Right? And from a personnel perspective, they could become a very good attacking team in transition and counterattacks. But when you're playing Brighton at home, and your team name is Manchester United, there's a certain way of playing, and there's a certain expectation of how you're going to approach the match. And I don't know if Ten Hag can really walk into a home match against Brighton and say, yes, we are going to let Brighton have 60+%. Brighton and Hove Albion have 60+% of the ball, and we're going to try to beat them in transition by defending with out of possession, given our injury situation and given our kind of uncertain tactics thus far, because they have gotten caught, I think, between two minds in the sense that they want to, create more high turnovers and be better out of possession. And against a team like Brighton, who, has the most extreme defensive profile in the league thus far in terms of conceding a bunch of high, quality chances and then not much else. Like, you could see the path where like they're going to have problems defending in space against the United attackers. But this is now United without Antony. I'm fascinated to see who starts in his place. And I think that, even if Højlund is in there, which I expect him to start now, there is a certain kind of gelling period that comes along with that. So you have to think Man United is better than Brighton on a neutral field. And look, the market thinks that. The market thought that coming into the season. None of us agree with that. I still don't think that's true. So naturally, we're all going to be on the Seagulls as a nice dog here. The market has come down a little bit. So, Man United has taken a little bit of money. Brighton, United was about -105 on the look ahead. Then they drifted all the way to +130. Now they've come back to about +115-ish. So there has been some buyback on United at home here. I think that's some injury news. Maybe not having Antony is a positive. But they, are going to have problems stopping Brighton because everybody does. I mean, Evan Ferguson is a superstar, and now he's playing, in starting matches. So look out, Ligue. Have fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we love ourselves.
And Ansu Fati maybe makes his debut here.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
another shot monster, great attacking midfielder.
Yeah, BJ. I mean, this one was made for you too.
Oh yeah, I love Brighton, but I also love over 3.5 at +120. So Anthony made a great point where Manchester United is stuck in between two different tactics, where they purchased Onana because De Gea couldn't use his feet and they couldn't build out of the back. So they bought Onana so that they could start to build out of the back. But then Ten Hag comes out, and obviously, like Anthony said, they want to become the best transitional team in the world. What has happened time and time again with United is when they face teams that will man-mark, high-press them. So teams like Arsenal, teams like Newcastle, teams like Brighton, they have struggled so bad because guys like Casemiro are not guys who are going to have their back to the defense, receive the ball and be press resistant and build out of the back that way. So far this season, Casemiro has turned the ball over 20 times in United's own final third. That is really, really bad. And Brighton, although like Anthony mentioned, they are very bad defensively to start. Like, they've been really, really bad. They've conceded 8 big scoring chances in 4 matches, and it hasn't really been a murderer's row. They are a pressing monster under De Zerbi. So far, second in passes per defensive action, number 1 in high turnovers, number 1 in shots off of those high turnovers. So they're obviously a team that can just rip you apart if you turn it over in your own final third. And the problems that are going to exist here with United is, like, I agree with you, Anthony. Like, is Ten Hag really going to come out here and say, we're going to pull off what David Moyes did with West Ham? Like, when they went to Brighton, we're going to sit deep. We're not even going to press them. We're just going to sit in our own defensive block and try to see this game out and then look to counter. I do not see them even attempting to do that. And United could be without 3 of their usual starters across their back line.
Yeah.
Right now, Varane is out, Shaw is out, Malacia is out. So there goes your 1 and 2 depth at left back. So they've been playing Dallo out of position at left back. And Lisandro Martinez went off against Arsenal and is questionable to play in this. So we could see Victor Lindelof and Harry Maguire back there for Manchester United. So they really are not going to be able to build out of the back with those 2 guys.
And that's the thing, right? So United, I actually thought, I watched Arsenal match pretty closely. Like, the Arsenal press wasn't as good as it was in the spring meeting. And I think a lot of that was actually Onana. Like, Onana was a good part of the distribution, the first phase, but then everything broke down. Mm-hmm. Like, they couldn't get the ball from, okay, Onana made a good pass. Now, how do we get it to Rashford? And they really couldn't do that. And I think Amrabat is probably the guy that fits in there best next to Casemiro. I think like an Amrabat-Casemiro pivot could be really effective for United, but I don't think we're going to see that on Saturday. So I think
he's questionable.
There's still time maybe for this to gel, to work. Like, I truly do think that an Onana, Casemiro, Amrabat, Højlund, Rashford, Fernandes team could be really good. It's a really good spine. But again, like, that's more of a later question, not a Saturday question.
Yep.
And one more thing I'll mention, Michael, I know you pointed this out the last time we talked about United, how as it gets later and later in the match, they just look absolutely gassed, like time and time again. So far this season, they've conceded 7.1 expected goals in 4 matches. 3.5 of them have come in the 76th minute or later per understat. So they really have defended okay for large stretches. And then with no depth on their bench right now because of all these injuries, they have just conceded so many chances towards the end. So if you're somebody who likes to live bet and this match is sitting kind of stale and there's been a bunch of chances, it may be a good opportunity to jump in on a live over here. But for me, I'm on Brighton money line. I bet Brighton early, got him at minus 120 plus and a half, but I forgot to log it in the app. So we're just going to go Brighton money line at plus 230 because I truly believe that this should be a little more closer to a pick 'em than Brighton being over 2-1.
Surprise, surprise, all of us on Brighton as an underdog. Spurs, Anthony. I think this was the match that I had like the least kind of intrigue for. The only thing I want to say is that the price on Spurs getting a little nuts. They're minus 350 hosting Sheffield United, 10-1 at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And the draw's plus 450. I'd be really nervous laying it with Spurs just because they're still in the early stages of a revolution that we're behind. I got Anthony on board finally for Big Ange Ball, and we think it'll be a good thing for Spurs. But in the early going, like it is still a little high risk, and it's just that Sheffield United aren't the type of team that, like I said, a lot of underdogs on this weekend that I like, and they're just not going to make the list. So I'll be passing, but I would be a little wary at this kind of number for Spurs.
Well, Tottenham played 2 opponents prior to the international break, Burnley and Bournemouth, who are trying to press, trying to play with ball, trying to be more assertive. And that kind of played into Tottenham's hands a little bit, gave them more space to operate. They also then played Son up top and benched Richarlison against Burnley and then had an attacking outburst. I don't think that's a coincidence. So, I think that there's a big question mark as to how they manage this going forward, because Son up top, you don't get him as a wing outlet and a runner, but in this kind of matchup, that's probably better because there's not like there's going to be a ton of space to operate in behind Sheffield United here, because United is not going to play like Brentford or Bournemouth and Burnley. They're going to play more like Brentford did against Tottenham, which was, okay, have the ball in our final third. You're not going to get into our penalty area. Of course, Sheffield's much worse than Brentford defensively, but the tactics kind of play out in a similar way. And I think that there's real questions about how good are these Spurs wingers, whether it's Solomon and Kulusevski, the two I'd expect to start potentially if they play Son up top. How good are they at beating a man and getting a cross in? And they don't really have like a target man in the middle like Harry Kane used to be. So I think there are some questions about how they'll break down effective low blocks. You could debate how effective the low block of Sheffield will be, but it would be under or nothing for me. I will be waiting on some lineups. Destiny Udogie might be the best left back in the league. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm going to throw that into the space. Check back in like 3 months. I'm telling you, man, some of the underlying numbers on him have been really impressive, getting forward, defending, like everything in his profile. And it's, he popped at Sassuolo, Udinese prior to this too. So it's not like this came out of nowhere. He's been really, really impressive overall. So, I'm buying into the profile and his ability to, win take-ons and get forward and contribute defensively and win the ball high. It's been extremely impressive to watch. And him and Sarr, I think, are these are guys who were bought last year and now have kind of been brought in this year. And, that's been a big part of the revolution, willing to play the kids, which Antonio Conte was not. So, exciting times. There's still a ceiling on this team unless they get a better striker. So, Europa League, maybe.
They've got one of the best in the world. BJ.
Richarlison?
Yeah. BJ, what are your thoughts here?
Man,
I do like the under 3. Best price you can find is at plus 1.8. Actually, I bet 365. Anthony hit the nail on the head here is that Tottenham have played essentially 3 teams, United, Bournemouth and Burnley, who will press them high, play in their hands, and allow Tottenham to go forward and do what they do best, which is go forward with a blitz them attack, transitional opportunities. That's where Son and company are at their best. You saw it against Brentford. Now, I'm not saying Sheffield United is Brentford, but they did struggle for large stretches of trying to break down a low block. And Sheffield United, so far this season, although they have conceded a lot of chances, they do have the fourth best final third penalty box entry conversion rate, which is a very encouraging sign if you're going to play five at the back and clog up the middle of the pitch. And like Anthony mentioned, Tottenham doesn't have Harry Kane anymore, which means they don't really have that aerial threat in the middle of the box where if Sheffield United clogs up the middle of the pitch and just says, okay, you can try to beat us to death with crosses, and they just don't have anybody to get on the end of those, then that's where the problem lies for Tottenham. And Sheffield United, I mean, yes, the expected goals numbers have been bad, but if you watch their matches, like they do well for really, really large stretches, and then they just make one or two like really dumb mistakes where they just don't pick up a runner, and teams will head in an easy goal inside the 6-yard box, and then it's like, oh my gosh, look at that, they just conceded 2.2 expected goals. And it's like, all right, well, they did like. If you look at for example, a good example is the Manchester City match where City took, I think, like 20 shots in the first hour. Like it was an insane number, but all of those weren't really of great value. And then of course, Haaland scores and they got to play more aggressive, and City create a bunch of chances and ends up with, 3.5 expected goals with a penalty in there. But I think they can really frustrate this Tottenham team for really large stretches. They're going to be on the road. They're obviously not going to come out and try and press them. They're going to stay very compact. And I don't think Tottenham is going to really press them once Sheffield United has the ball, because they've shown they're just going to send the ball long. So I think Tottenham will kind of sit back as well and just try to win those duels in the middle of the pitch, which will create kind of a slow clog type match. So I only projected 2.6 for this one. So under 3 at plus 108 for me.
We joked about Ange overs, and then like the market completely overreacted to like one game, but that's been the whole league too. So,
and a look ahead spot for Tottenham.
Look ahead to what?
The North London derby.
Yeah, I don't care about that. It's off international break. We don't have Europe. No look ahead there. We will be betting Tottenham next week though if the line stays where it is right now.
No, we won't.
I will be.
West Ham and City now. I guess the question now is like when is the time coming?
This might be it.
It's close. 6-1 on West Ham
run
at
at West Ham United.
No, to fade City.
Oh, to fade City.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ride. I'm thinking about riding this Linsanity run.
The West Ham Linsanity.
Moyes just.
They kept Paqueta.
They might just win the treble. West Ham 6-1 at home. City minus 223 traveling, and the draws plus 350. I can't really pick out anything interesting with City yet. Usually, there's something interesting that kind of bubbles up early on in the year.
They're worse with Haaland.
Yeah, but I mean, we said that about them at the beginning of last year too. They were the best team in the world.
Can I say they're worse without De Bruyne? And how clear it is right now, and how they're going to lose to Red Star Belgrade.
Like they're just figure it out. But I mean, those are bigger picture questions for West Ham. I just like they're a tough team to beat when they're playing Moyes ball, and like I know that they weren't great against Luton Town, but I'll forgive them. That was a weird spot. First Premier League game there, and for that home crowd,
I can't get the Brighton match out of my head.
Of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. They needed to be on the ball.
Michael, I can't get the Brighton match out of my head.
Yeah,
they were so good.
But like Brighton doesn't have Rodri and Stones and Gvardiol, and like City does.
Yeah, but this is what Gvardiol's second game with them.
Here's your case. Here's your case if you want to bet West Ham. I'm going to say this right now. I think that West Ham, the business that they've done this summer, has actually been very, very good to replace Declan Rice. Essentially, you cannot replace Declan Rice with one player. But what you can do is take the best qualities that Declan Rice has, because he is perfect at everything. You can take his great defensive qualities and you can replace them with Edison Alvarez. And you can take his great ball progression and passing skills and you can replace them with James Ward-Prowse. And I think it kind of works, especially in this match. I mean, that Brighton match, Edison Alvarez is so good in that defensive midfield role, protecting the back line, tracking the strikers wherever they go.
he is the reason why now this West Ham low block is actually really effective and able to keep teams out. City without De Bruyne is a very, very interesting case. If you watch the match against Fulham, what's had to happen is now they're playing Julian Alvarez kind of up top and into 10 kind of role. And with him being a natural striker, he's had to kind of drop back and play that 10 role, receive the ball, and kind of facilitate it. Rodri is not Gundogan. He's not a box invader. He's not somebody that's going to get forward and push up on that second line of defense. He's much more someone that kind of sits out and around the box. So now him alongside with Kovacic, it's a much, much more defensive approach from City. I mean, listen, they're still City. Like, they've still created a ton of chances. Like, it's not like they're like, oh my gosh, like it's panic mode. But what De Bruyne does for them is not only is he great at receiving the ball in between the lines and picking out those passes and getting the assists, but what Pep has done a lot with him is that when teams try to man mark him, he'll just pull him out wide and take their best center back or defensive midfielder with him and create space in the middle of the pitch. Now that they don't have that, teams are able to clog up the middle of the pitch. And I think that's why you saw them take only 6 shots against Fulham, is just because they couldn't find anything through the middle of the pitch. Now you have Grealish questionable for this match. It looks like John Stones will be back as well. I think there's some question marks with City right now. And they may very well win this match like 4-0. And, oh my gosh, we're all so stupid for even questioning that City is maybe worse off. But I think there's a real chance here. Now, the number's not good enough. Like, I'm
not even close. That's the problem.
Not even close to good enough. Like, now, we can have this wonderful conversation, but I need West Ham plus 1.5 to have to even start the conversation here. So it is a pass for me. Would need a way better number on
City
West Ham.
at the beginning of last year was minus 1.5 at West Ham. And I was like, yeah, that's about right. Now they're like a goal and a quarter. Like, is West Ham better? I think they're better set up to play the most extreme form of Moyes ball, which is just like, we're going to do the set pieces, we're going to do the occasional counterattack, and we're going to defend for our lives. And so far, so good. It's been effective. But how long is that going to work? How long is Mikel Antonio going to stay playing at the level he has been in the first month? But keeping him, I think, is a huge key, of course.
Kudus too.
Yeah.
Makes it
I don't know how much
interesting.
he fits in the system, though. That's going to be interesting.
He's going to play. I think he's going to play more centrally.
Right, but like, that's where Paqueta and they still going to play a double pivot. So where does he fit in the team? I don't know. And he's not like a get the ball and then run and dribble with it. He's more of a we have the ball in the final third.
Moyes will figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean,
so it'll be interesting. But I have no bet here.
He's a transfer market legend.
Their defense has been quote unquote good, but they've conceded a shit ton of chances. They just haven't gone in.
Yeah, but so is everybody. I mean, that's just the Premier League is just chance after chance.
I think I saw the total.
It's more fun for a neutral, way less fun for betting.
I think it's like right now, last season, the Premier League averaged, I think it was around 2 point.
Actually,
don't quote me on that.
0.3 of a goal, roughly, expected per 90.
Yeah, it's 0.3 better. It's like last year was like 3, and now it's like 3.3.
And there's a small impact on like extra time, but a lot of it is just I think it's tactical. I do think.
Yeah, I agree.
I do too. And one of the teams that is part of this is Brentford. They're plus 500, going up north to St. James Park to take on Newcastle minus 182. The draw is plus 300. Brentford's right up there. When you look at the underlying metrics, as one of the best offensive teams in the league. Newcastle coming in 1 win, no draws, 3 losses.
They stink.
We spent some time talking about Newcastle on the Champions League pod. Really tough schedule, but I think when you actually look at the matches themselves, you'd come away less impressed with Newcastle than you could be if you just said, oh, well, you know what? They lost to City, they lost to Liverpool, and they lost to Brighton. The Brighton performance was not good. They were down 3-0 inside 70 minutes and couldn't stop Evan Ferguson. The Liverpool performance was a choke job, and City, they just never got going. So if you're going to be a team that is one of the favorites to be a top 4 and a potential gate crasher in the title race, those are matches that you need and points you need to get. So I think that the market maybe is a little too high on Newcastle. It's a team that I really have trouble getting right. I finally did by betting Brighton against them on the other side of the international break, and I'm going to bet Brentford here because I think Brentford has the offensive chops to to give Newcastle problems, to at least get a 1 or 2 on the board. And if Newcastle's slow and pragmatic and takes forever to build up, like Brentford can catch them. Like Liverpool caught him with 10 men twice. This Brentford team can catch him on the counter. And Ivan Toney, like, who knew? Are they better without him, Anthony?
I don't think so, but the attack is the attack is a little bit buoyed by that red card showing against Fulham. They kind of ran up the score on Fulham once they were down to 10 men, but this is the ultimate boss level challenge for Newcastle. Whether this is the match where we will learn the most about Newcastle this season, because again, like they lost to City, they lost to Brighton, on the road. They were expected to lose those matches. They choked Liverpool at home after outplaying them for 75 minutes. That happens. Didn't really take too much from that loss, other than the fact that Eddie Howe's Newcastle was too passive, playing with the lead, too passive in possession, and that is the ultimate question that will decide how good they are this year. Teams are going to start playing them more defensively. They're going to give them less space in behind. They're going to play them like they are a top 4 team. Brentford is the boss of this. This is what they do to every big team. They cause a ton of problems this way in their rest defense. They're very passive. When they want to be, they can defend the penalty area well. They spring counters. They get in behind on you. This will be the challenge. And Newcastle can separate from them and win this match by multiple goals. I will tip my cap because I'm betting that they will not do that. So I'm taking Brentford +1. Don't dislike a money line sprinkle either. I think this is going to be a challenge for them. I think this game is going to be very instructive as to what we think about Newcastle going forward, because I honestly don't have a real changed opinion of them after the first 4, in which they got a great matchup with Villa and dominated them. Okay, they lose to City by a goal. They choke a game. They lose a game, whatever. Now, this is where the schedule lightens up a little bit starting here. Can they get some results and start putting up points? Because I think that they're going to be in the mix.
Yeah, BJ, we're going to have to convince you. You're passing here, but we'll get you on board. But
shocked.
I was too.
This matchup has been really bad for Brentford the last year or so.
Yeah, don't let that stuff scare you.
That's 2 games.
Don't let that stuff scare you.
It's been a tad scary. They've gotten ripped apart multiple times by Newcastle. So that scares me. And, you also look at the fact that, yes, Brentford has played Tottenham, but other than that, the schedule has been a little bit easier.
Wait a second. I remember one of those games because I had Brentford.
Oh, the one where each
Brentford missed like 14 big chances and then got done on the counter twice and lost 2-1. Like they weren't that bad.
I have the one in my mind where they got ripped apart.
They got destroyed. Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, the home game.
It was like 5-1, 4-1.
Yeah, that one you just keep sticking in my mind because I'm pretty sure I had Brentford in that match. But yeah, this is Newcastle at home. They've been one of the best teams in the Premier League at home. It's a very, very difficult place to play. Yeah, I'm going to need some convincing because I do project Newcastle at -170. So I'm pretty in line with what the market is. So I'm going to pass and probably regret it when Brentford wins.
It's going to be 1-1. Newcastle 1.75 XG. Most of it coming in the last 10 minutes when they're like, oh shit, we're about to drop points.
When they put Callum Wilson on.
Yeah, Callum Wilson. They need to play him with Isak. I'm sorry. Like the Almiron experiment just does not do it for me. But again, a suboptimal lineup. Another reason to think, well, maybe Newcastle.
Yeah. But I'll be on the Bees money line. We'll talk more about that as well later. Bournemouth is +375 hosting Chelsea. Bet regret not going in on Forest against Chelsea.
Both teams to score. What a bet that was. Freaking Jackson missing a tap in from like 3 yards. It's just unbelievable.
I don't know how Chelsea does it, man. They Timo Werner, Nico Jackson, like this just
Kai Havertz.
Great. Yeah, Havertz, like it's
Mount had a bad stretch.
It's beautiful stuff.
Raz.
Yeah, Chelsea's odds on the road -138 to plus, and you can get +280 on the draw. Our high hopes for Bournemouth have kind of faded a little bit.
No.
So I'm going to be sitting this one out, BJ.
How have they faded?
They're fine. I thought they were actually pretty good against Brentford. They obviously, Brentford created a lot of chances and they were
good.
Bournemouth was under siege, but they were very effective with their counterattacking opportunities. So
I'm just upset they haven't won yet. They haven't paid off as a money line underdog for me yet.
They're getting better and they have the personnel that can potentially give
Chelsea problems here. Chelsea, it's very, very interesting because they have all of this talent, man. Like you look at it, like a Caicedo and Fernandes midfield should be just running teams over like left and right. And they're just not right now. And even though they have the best pressing numbers in the Premier League, like they're best in passes per defensive action, like they've been good in that aspect. But I don't think that Pochettino has really figured out what his front three is going to be. Like I can't really put my finger on it. Like just when you watch Chelsea, you're just like, man, this team just doesn't really have it tactically figured out, like, or have a plan like some of these other teams do.
They don't
at
get
the
shots.
top. What?
They don't get shots.
No, they don't. That's
They do
the
everything
truth.
to get the shots.
They don't have a true number 9, and that's what they've needed for a long time. And they've spent $1 billion except on a striker. It's crazy. And yes, I know that Nkunku and Nicholas Jackson can play as a false 9, and they're good enough in that role. But yeah, I don't know. This is an easy pass for me. I think the number's about right for Chelsea. I think I don't know if we're going to learn really much from this match. I mean, even if Bournemouth wins, I think we can come away just saying like, yeah, there's still problems with Chelsea, but yeah, I need to see Chelsea show some continuity, tactical plan, life, something for me to actually want to wager on them.
Bournemouth's going to get healthier and get to the easier part of their schedule and start winning. It's my takeaway. But for now, they got a draw with West Ham and Brentford, 2 mid-table teams.
They'll do it when they're like minus 115 at home against Fulham or something.
Sign me up to bet that, please.
Yeah, I would lay that.
It's not as exciting as
Michael Lieboff, who famously said, "I just can't do minus 110 anymore." last time I saw him in person.
Forest plus 120 at home hosting Burnley. This is the Monday Night Football game. Burnley's plus 225. The draw's plus 250. I thought we were going to get a little bit of a better number on Burnley, but
yeah,
it's just never going to come. Maybe they are Manchester City. They've got their old Manchester City captain, so I don't know. And I think that this is the kind of the matchup that Burnley's been waiting for. So I was kind of excited to bet them because I think so.
I mean, because like, yes, I get in respect, like they've faced a bunch of teams that can build out of the back and they've just ripped them apart like left and right. They can't, like, again, I'll say it again, like Vincent Kompany, you have to sit back. Like you can't just press with reckless abandonment with the front four against good build-up teams and just expect that what happened in the championship is going to happen here. You have to figure out something different to be able to survive. Now, I mean, Nottingham Forest is just going to send the ball along. They're not going to try to build out of the back against Burnley. They can press them all they want. They're just going to play the ball over the top against them. And I have a question for you guys. Is like Nottingham Forest, like not in this match, but going forward, like bettable good? Like in terms of like backing them as an underdog against some of these bigger teams?
Taiwo.
Yeah.
Taiwo Nation.
That Anthony didn't find out about until last year.
Well, wait a second.
This is
the Steve Cooper thing. I don't think he's a good manager. But if you buy enough players, eventually, like 2 or 3 of them are going to be good enough. And that they got one. They got Taiwo. He's good. And then they got rid of Brendan Johnson, who's not good, and so they don't play him anymore. They can't play him. So therefore, it could be better.
Like,
and then Sangare is good. They got him.
Here we go, Michael. No, Forest is going to City next. City off of a Champions League. 3rd match in 7 days.
Where is City?
Probably be like
Champions League.
What?
At Belgrade?
No, they're home. Tune into the Champions League pod where my best bet might be Belgrade +3 against City. But no, this match is like the easiest pass on the board for me. It sucks that it's on a Monday. I wish they would have just buried this, in the 10 a.m. window and played Brighton and United or something.
Maybe,
I know they wouldn't
play again. They should just reshow the match once Brighton.
Yeah, I know they can't. I know they can't because of the European schedule, but it would have been nice to have a better match here on a Monday. But yeah, I mean, Burnley can press all they want, but Forest is just going to send the ball long, and then they're going to have to deal with Taiwo and all their other big guys up front. So yeah,
it's a pass, but. If you are looking for some action, I think Taiwo is like a 2+ goal scorer. Maybe go down that road. All right, Bundesliga time, Anthony. If Gladbach Bayern is your Super Bowl, this one is the Pro Bowl. I feel like it didn't take too long. I noticed in the sheet right away. that you were ready to fade Bayern right away again.
We go again. We couldn't get the money line home on Super Bowl Saturday. A couple weeks ago, it was we took the lead and then hit the post and had a chance to go up 2. And I was like, "What is happening? Like, this is the worst Gladbach team I've ever seen fielded." And we were winning it against Bayern, but Bayern did score late, winning 2-1. Actually, the perfect result, really. Once I realized Gladbach wasn't going to win the game, I was like, "Well, for our relegation ticket, they probably should lose this game." But then also covered easily. Gladbach Day cashes again against the spread. BJ did not bet it once again.
I didn't.
Disappointed. One day we'll get him to do it, and that will be the day Bayern wins 6-0. But I'm going to fade Bayern again. I think they're, I'm not going to say that like I downgraded them off of the game against Gladbach. They were fine. They were the better team, deserved to win in the end. But I think that this Leverkusen team, there's a chance we're undervaluing them. They put up numbers that were right up there with Leipzig in the second half of last season. And they added a striker in Victor Boniface from Union Saint-Gilloise, who is putting up he won't sustain this level of production, but the numbers he's putting up in this system, it's like they took Moussa Diaby out and then got a better version of him, and now he plays central, and Wirtz is healthy, and Frimpong's been really good, and this team is loaded with really fun attacking players, and Bayern may not have Kimmich for this match. So they lose Gravenberch, they don't have Kimmich now, and they are going to be vulnerable, I think, against this Leverkusen team. So I took some money line and I took some +1. Boniface, 4 goals and 2 assists in his first 3 Bundesliga matches, averaging 1.1 expected goals plus expected assists per 90. Just obscene numbers in winning, taking the ball and then dribbling it into the penalty area, being an outlet, and then just getting ridiculously good shot numbers. Dominated against Gladbach in the matchup they had as well. So I'm really all in on this guy, and I think that he raises this ceiling so high for Leverkusen that they may be the 3rd best team in the league. I think there's a decent shout they're better than Dortmund come the end of this.
All right, yeah, I think you've convinced me here. I saw that pop in, and I was like, I'll probably jump in on this one.
It's a Friday afternoon too, so
yeah, exactly. It's nice. It's a nice way to wind down the week. BJ, what do you have in Germany?
Oh, let's have some fun. How about Freiburg Dortmund over 3.5 at +130? Weird situation here, especially Dortmund is a very, very interesting case right now because they have been very, very vulnerable defensively, and especially with teams that can do quick transitional attacks, which is a team that Freiburg just bases their entire attack on. Their main ball stopper in the middle of the pitch is Amir Can right now. We've seen him over his career. He's not an elite ball stopper. He's an okay central midfielder, but he is not what Jude Bellingham was for Dortmund. And Dortmund also was below average defense defending set pieces. And if you know anything about Freiburg, they're basically like the Brentford of Germany, where they just put this loads of value on just scoring off of set pieces. So they'll have advantages there. And the biggest thing with this matchup is both starting goalkeepers for both teams are hurt. So we got backup goalkeepers in net there. I think it'll be a very back and forth transitional type match. Freiburg has actually been pretty poor defensively despite their defensive shape. Just gave up 5 goals to Stuttgart in their last match. So I projected right on 3.5 goals. So over 3.5 +130 is a good enough price for me. Not
to mention the Freiburg-Brentford connection. Flecken was the starter at Freiburg last year, the goalie. He's been sold to Brentford. So that's, the backup goalie, the guy that came in to replace Flecken out. So yeah, real question marks. I mean, Dortmund doesn't play defense, and last year they just outscored everybody. This year they're not doing that. So it's a bad.
Also, Kevin Schade at Brentford was the Freiburg striker last year that they bought in the January transfer window.
Serie A time. BJ, Serie A.
Yeah, pretty simple here. Monday afternoon, Torino, +125. Against, can you guys guess?
Is Dia playing or is he out?
I don't know. Even if he does.
I believe he's going to miss, potentially.
He's potentially going to miss, and it was a huge loss for him huge loss for them when they went to Lecce and just got absolutely destroyed. But they're doing it again. Salernitana has putting up just horrible expected goals numbers. Dia's obviously huge to them. They don't really have another striker like him. I don't really like laying +125 on the road, but I don't think that, by my projections, there really isn't much value in Italy this
this weekend. It's basically my main two. It's just bet Roma and fade Salernitana is just what my numbers tell me every single week. If you follow me in the app, I've parlayed Roma's more money line with Barcelona.
Stop betting Roma. They stink.
No, they don't. They're going to win the Europa League. I projected Torino at, I think, around minus 105. So decent price on a Monday afternoon, plus 125 on them. They haven't really gotten going offensively this year, but they're going to face a really, really bad defense. So projections value. So give me Torino.
I want to give a quick story. Wasted Galazzo on Twitter. He's a soccer bettor, does some good stuff with market movement and player value. And he did a tweet the other day. He said, "Who do you think in my model is the most valuable player to his team in the top 5 leagues?" The answer in his model was Boulaye for Salernitana, which is pretty funny.
Yep.
So yeah, it just shows you how valuable he is. He may be out on Monday.
And Anthony, you've got the Milan derby.
I like to stick in the big matches, but I think that both of these attacks, Inter's attack was clearly downgraded in the market at the beginning of the season, but like they have picked up right where they left off and kind of dropped off the old immobile guys and become much more of a dynamic attack as a result. They're not as slow and methodical. They take Brozovic out. They get more athletic, younger, and more dynamic as a result. Like Thuram has come in and been really good. Like this attack has taken a clear step forward for me in my numbers. And I think the same is true for AC Milan in this matchup because they have really bolstered the non-Leao parts of their attack with Pulisic and Chukwueze and Loftus-Cheek as a progressive passer in there. So the systems, have this total at 2.5. The market has this total at 2.5. I just think it's a touch low. Like I get it. Rivalry matchup, it's going to be cagey, so to speak. But remember this matchup in the Champions League, like Inter was running through them in the first 20 minutes and up 2 goals, and then they just sat on it. I think Milan has more attacking punch. Still have questions about this defense. This Milan defense is very young. They don't have their best defensive midfielder. So I think there's real questions about their defense, but I think both teams have pretty good attacks here. So over 2.5, minus 115 for me.
Okay, La Liga and Ligue 1, BJ. Anthony and I are passing, so this is all you.
Yeah, Las Palmas +1, minus 135 against Sevilla. Sevilla's been so bad. They've been so bad in La Liga once again. 3 straight losses, and the expected goals numbers are once again really, really bad for them. And listen, they might just do this again where they just put all the value into the Champions League and eventually finish third in their group and go to the Europa League and go on some crazy run again. And then they just don't care about about La Liga, which creates a perfect opportunity here for us. But in what world should they be laying minus 162 against really anybody in La Liga right now? And Las Palmas, like I mentioned in the last podcast, was a plus 0.74 XG differential per 90 in the second division last season. They put in a really good performance against Girona right before the break and just got beat on a late winner. But I mean, I have Sevilla closer to even money than laying a full goal at home. I mean, there's still some real problems with this team. So Las Palmas +1. And then another Friday match, PSG Nice under 3 goals at minus 104. The Luis Enrique PSG, like we know with Luis Enrique, is they're going to hold a ton of possession. So far, 4 matches, 72% possession for PSG. And like we mentioned on the Champions League pod, what's good about this version of the PSG team is that their front 3 is actually going to do some defensive work. They're actually going to counter press. They're not, when they lose the ball, they're not just going to, just let the opponent have it and just slink back into whatever type of defensive shape that they were running under Galtier. They actually, with Dembele and Koulibaly, they will actually be pressing, and it bears out in the numbers so far. Pass per defensive action last season was 11 for PSG. This season, it's 8.5, and they've forced the most high turnovers of anybody in Ligue 1. But what we know about PSG is they value the Champions League over anything else. So we could see some rotation here. We could see Mbappe potentially get rested, which, obviously would, I believe, deflate this total. And Nice, over the second half last season, only allowed 0.96 non-penalty expected goals. They're a very, very good defensive block team. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a stalemate here, slow-paced match with Enrique. So I like under 3 goals.
Okay, now on to our 3-leg moneyline underdog. A shout out to Luton Town. I was really having a tough time deciding between the one I went with and them, but Anthony, you can go first.
Yeah, I'm going to take Bayer Leverkusen 4-1 Friday afternoon against Bayern Munich. There's been some cracks in the armor. Kimmich potentially being out for them is a huge red flag because they don't have any depth really in their central midfield, and he is so good at ball retention and winning the ball and helping their transition defense. And Leverkusen with Wirtz, with Frimpong, and with Boniface are just so fun to watch and so good out of possession. Javi Alonso's done a hell of a job. I think 4-1 is a little cheap on them. I understand Bayern at home and how dominant they are. It's Bayern Munich, blah, blah, blah. But Leverkusen is maybe trending upward and leveling up with their new striker.
Easy one. Brentford 5-1 against Newcastle on the road. We talked about this now for 2 years. This team just punches up so well in these spots. Counterattacking dynamo. Newcastle's showing some cracks in the armor as well, I would say, out of the gates. Brentford doesn't look like they're missing Ivan Toney too much. Just always trust Thomas Frank when the number gets this high. So Brentford, baby, back on the bees. Feels good, BJ. And you're on an old faithful too here.
Oh, yes. Brighton plus 230 against Manchester United. Like we've already talked about, Manchester United is stuck between two different tactical plans where they sometimes want to be a build-up team, and then other times Ten Hag says we want to be the best transitional team in the world. Well, they're going through a ton of injuries right now that really hamper both abilities to be a transitional team and a build-up team. We could potentially see a Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof center back pairing if Lisandro Martinez is out for this match, which is going to be very, very difficult defending a Brighton team that is averaging over 2 non-penalty expected goals so far this season, and a Brighton team that is a top 5 pressing team under De Zerbi. And United, they are not conditioned well enough to hold on and stay with Brighton for a full 90 minutes. So far this season, they've conceded 7.1 expected goals. 3.5 of them have came in the 76th minute or later. So Brighton will continually keep coming at them. De Zerbi ball will continually keep building out of the back and coming at United. So the price on Brighton's too good. Give me them at plus 230.
Leverkusen, Brighton, Brentford. If you wrap them up in a money line parlay, it's 98-1. If you sprinkle Luton Town in there, 543-1.
98. I think it's my favorite one of the year. So
yeah, this is a good one.
1-3.
We haven't hit one of these yet. So this people get all the regression back in 1 week.
We've had a couple 2-goal leads melt, so we're due.
Yeah.
So that brings us to our favorite bets in the Premier League. I'll go first. BJ just made the case for Brighton, and I'm echoing it. I like Brighton on the money line at Manchester United. This offense will just give United plenty of trouble, even at the Theater of Dreams. So I like the matchup here for Brighton at 2-1 or better. Anthony, what do you got?
Yeah, Everton +1. Toffees, baby.
Here we go. Everton
All right,
Magic.
BJ. I think it's going to be my first. Look, I bet Arsenal last week. I felt sick the whole match.
You're going to feel sick.
They scored a late winner in diabolical fashion to cash the ticket. The market has moved toward them in next week's North London derby. But
it's because who in their right mind would bet Everton?
Well, I'm talking about next week, but also this week.
Oh.
The market, +1 on Everton at even money is a little bit lower than I think it should be. So I'm going to take the Toffees.
Sounds terrible. BJ,
it is.
What do you got?
Yeah, how about back to the Brighton Man United game? A little different bet over 3.5 goals at +120. Like I already mentioned with the Brighton offense, how good they've been under De Zerbi. The defense has actually been really, really bad. They haven't faced the most difficult run of teams here, and they've conceded 8 big scoring chances and are allowing 1.75 non-penalty expected goals per match. And really what it boils down to for Brighton is, yes, they are a good pressing team, but they really miss Levi Colwill pairing alongside Lewis Dunk. They really haven't found a good center back pairing to go along with him and playing that left center back role. That guy is just whoever they're rotating in there, has continually gotten cooked time and time again. So United, who again wants to become the best transitional team in the world, if they want to play in transition here, they could find some space here against a Brighton team that just hasn't been closing down the ball as well as they have in the past. So Brighton, Manchester United over 3.5, projected 3.79 goals for this one. So a ton of value on over 3.5 at +120 for me.
What a fun show it's been. What a fun show it's been. And the good news is we will be back for another fun one pretty quickly here as we get started at the Champions League. So Monday morning on this feed, you will hear our first Champions League match preview as we go over Tuesday and Wednesday's matches. And that just means we're in the thick of it, boys. We are right back in the thick of a soccer season. It will be relentless from this point forward. But hopefully this 3-leg underdog cashes. Maybe even the 4-legger with Luton. For Anthony DeBundo, BJ Cunningham, I'm Michael Liebop. Thank you again for listening. Thank you to our sponsors, Bet365. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Wondergoal and the other Action Network podcasts. And that would just make our producers happy. And speaking of which, we also tip our caps to our producer, Noah, and our director of sound, Matt Mitchell. Have a great weekend, everybody.